Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. The phrase, corpse on the throne, gets thrown around a lot, right? And I get it. It's catchy, dramatic, and perfectly bleak for the grimdark tone of Warhammer. But let's slow down for a second and really think about what that means. Because if the Emperor is truly just a corpse, a brain-dead husk kept in a semi-living state by the psychic energy of 10,000 souls a day, then how does anything continue to function? How does the Astronomican burn with such precision? How do saints still receive visions? How do certain individuals, like Malkador before his death, or maybe even the High Lords today, claim they've felt his will? Some fans say he's not conscious in the way we understand it, but that his mind is still somewhere, buried deep, fragmented maybe, but still there. And that theory always struck a chord with me, because it explains so much. It lines up with the strange, sudden moments of divine intervention we sometimes see in the lore. You know the ones. A dying guardsman suddenly rising to deliver a killing blow, a lost fleet finding its way through the warp when all hope was gone, a psyker screaming prophecy in tongues not spoken for 10,000 years. Coincidence? Maybe. But for many of us, those moments feel like echoes of something aware. Something watching. Other fans go deeper and darker. They propose that the Emperor exists in a dreamlike fugue, where time and self are dissolved. Imagine it like this. His body is broken, his voice silenced, but his soul is drifting through the warp like a stone in a raging river. Not gone, not asleep exactly, but elsewhere. Still active, but not in a linear, human way. It's like he's on the edge of dreaming, unable to fully wake, unable to fully sleep. And in that strange suspended state, what if he's dreaming us? This is where it starts to twist your brain a little, right? Because the warp isn't a passive thing. It's shaped by emotion, belief, imagination, and dreams most of all. If the Emperor's mind is floating in that sea, even shattered as it might be, it's not hard to imagine it sending out ripples. And those ripples might do more than just disturb the surface. They might build waves. Massive, reality-altering waves. Some argue that he's no longer one mind, but many. Like shattered glass, each shard holding a sliver of the original brilliance. Some shards remain benevolent. They guide, they protect. Others have grown cold, harsh, driven only by survival. And maybe a few have begun to forget who they once were. There are even whispers that these fragments sometimes speak, not just to psychers, but through them. That some visions aren't just echoes of the warp, but glimpses into the Emperor's fragmented consciousness, struggling to make sense of its own endless dreaming. Then there's the question no one likes to ask. If he can dream, does he still want to? Think about it. After 10,000 years of being strapped into a golden sarcophagus, being fed the souls of the innocent and damned alike, watching humanity crumble under the weight of its own brutality, what kind of dreams would that forge? Not the warm, guiding dreams of a benevolent father, I think. Not anymore. We're talking about a being who once had infinite plans and now has only silence. That kind of isolation would break anyone, even a god. There's this old fan theory I love. Not because I think it's right, but because it's terrifying. It says that the Emperor isn't dreaming about the Imperium. He's dreaming about before the Imperium. The Unification Wars, the Great Crusade, the Brotherhood of the Primarchs, and the Fall. And because the warp doesn't care about time, those dreams bleed backward and forward, shaping both past and future. Every time someone references his vision or design, maybe they're not talking about strategy. Maybe they're interpreting pieces of dreams, fractured and fed to them by the throne itself. Of course, there's the skeptical camp too. People who say the Emperor is no more than a power source now, a glorified battery keeping the light on while the rest of us stumble in the dark. And yeah, there's something chillingly believable about that. The sheer scale of sacrifice it takes to keep him alive doesn't suggest awareness. It suggests desperation. Maybe we keep him running because we don't know what else to do. Maybe the ritual has become the religion and the god we worship is long gone. But I don't know. There's just too much weirdness for me to believe he's fully dead. Too many miracles, too many unexplained anomalies. Maybe he doesn't think like we do anymore. Maybe his thoughts are so vast, so nonlinear, they barely resemble consciousness. But I think he's still in there, watching, dreaming. And maybe, just maybe, becoming something else entirely. And that brings us back to the throne. Because if the Emperor's dreams are still active, even in fragments, even in pain, then we're not just serving a memory. We're living in a reality shaped by his dreaming will, a world half remembered by a god who might not even know he's still dreaming. And that changes everything. There's a theory I keep circling back to, one of those ideas that starts as a whisper in the fandom, barely even a sentence, and then you realize it's everywhere once you know how to look. It's called psychoreality, and it basically says this: the Imperium isn't just a reflection of the Emperor's vision, it is his vision dreamed into existence through sheer force of will. It's not a metaphor, it's literal. The Imperium exists because he believes in it, or believed, or maybe keeps believing, even from the brink of death. When you start thinking about reality that way, especially in the Warhammer universe, things start getting weird, fast. Because the warp, as twisted and hostile as it is, responds to thought and belief. It's not passive. It doesn't wait, it shapes. Every emotion, every prayer, every scream of faith or rage or fear feeds into it. And the stronger the will behind it, the more concrete the outcome. So imagine the scale of the Emperor's psychic presence. Imagine the weight of that mind dreaming across 10,000 years. What could that do to the fabric of reality? A lot of fans point out how disturbingly self-fulfilling the Imperium is. It's this enormous engine of faith, repression, martyrdom, and ritual, and it just so happens to mirror the very ideologies the Emperor supposedly tried to resist in his early reign. But what if that's the point? What if, in his fractured state, his dreams started looping back into themselves? Memory turned myth, and myth turned law? The ecclesiarchy might not be the product of doctrine. It could be the product of subconscious memory. The God Emperor wasn't meant to be worshipped, but maybe part of him, some forgotten echo, still longs to be seen that way. And through the warp, that longing becomes truth. There's a haunting idea I read once on an old forum, buried under years of fan debates and speculation. It said, the Imperium is not what the Emperor wanted. It's what he feared it might become. And the more you think about that, the more it feels like a nightmare made real. But in psychoreality theory, fear is as powerful a shaping force as hope. So maybe what we're living in isn't the Emperor's dream, maybe it's his nightmare. One that he can't wake from. One that keeps building itself, century after century, shaped by every flicker of regret or dread in the depths of his broken consciousness. Now here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. The people of the Imperium don't just believe in the Emperor. They build shrines, chant litanies, engrave prayers into bullets, burn heretics in his name, and it's all focused on the throne. That focus, that intensity, that sheer mass of collective psychic energy, it doesn't just drift off into the void. It feeds back into the warp, it loops around. And in the theory of psychoreality, that collective belief doesn't just strengthen the Imperium, it cements the Emperor's dream, it locks him in. Every act of devotion is a stitch in the tapestry, and that tapestry becomes harder and harder to unravel. I've seen fans argue that this makes the Imperium a kind of psychic prison, not just for its people, but for the Emperor himself. That instead of breaking free into godhood or reincarnation, he's been trapped by the very thing meant to preserve him. His will, his fears, and the prayers of trillions have combined into a cage of fire and gold. The golden throne might as well be a dream catcher, one that filters out anything pure and magnifies everything grim. And we, unknowingly, keep it running. And then you start to wonder, is anything real in the Imperium? Is Terra itself the way it is because of natural decay, or because that's how the Emperor's broken mind remembers it? Are Space Marines guided by strategy, or are they fulfilling ancient roles burned into reality by sheer psychic repetition? Psychoreality says we don't live in a galaxy shaped by chance or chaos. We live in a dream state sustained by belief, bound by memory, and distorted by the raw emotional echoes of a god who cannot forget. It's not just that belief shapes the warp, it's that the warp answers back. It doesn't ask for permission. If enough minds scream a truth into its depths, it reflects it, it becomes it. And when the most powerful mind humanity has ever known is stuck dreaming across millennia, the lines between thought and matter collapse. Cities rise because he remembers them. Wars reignite because he still grieves. Heroes are born because some part of him still needs them to be. But here's the cruel part. He might not even know he's doing it. This might not be guided will. It might just be instinct, the final flares of a once great soul, echoing into reality like dying stars flickering in a black sky. And yet, those echoes are enough. They've created an empire that spans the stars. They've forged a religion out of shattered dreams. So when we say the Imperium is the Emperor's will made manifest, maybe we're not being poetic. Maybe we're being literal. Maybe this whole twisted, apocalyptic nightmare of bureaucracy and war is just the shadow cast by a sleeping god. And if that god ever wakes up, or worse, if his dreams ever change, the galaxy might not survive what comes next. The Golden Throne. Just saying the name feels heavy, doesn't it? It's become such a symbol, not just of power, but of stagnation, sacrifice, and mystery. For most of the Imperium, it's a holy relic, the centerpiece of a god empire. For others, it's a grotesque machine that devours lives daily just to keep a corpse breathing. But for a growing number of fans and theorists, it might be something stranger. Not just a throne, not even just a life support device, but a portal, a conduit between our material realm, the warp, and whatever dimension the Emperor's fragmented soul now resides in. Let's rewind a little. The throne was never originally built as a life support system. That came later, a necessary corruption of its intended purpose. In the days before Horus turned traitor, the throne was being designed as part of the Webway project, a plan to allow humanity to travel through the galaxy without relying on the warp at all. Imagine that. No more daemons, no more Jeller fields, no more psychics getting eaten alive during long voyages. But it failed, catastrophically. And when the Emperor was mortally wounded, they wired him into the throne like a last-ditch psychic battery, forever altering its function. And here's where things start getting weird. Because ever since that moment, since the Emperor's body was fused to this massive arcane fusion of technology and psychoactive energy, we've been left with a machine whose full function no one truly understands. Even the tech priests of Mars treat it like a mystery wrapped in reverence. There are systems within systems, circuits that lead nowhere, seals that no one dares to break. And it reacts, sometimes violently, sometimes intelligently. There are reports, mostly kept quiet, of the throne speaking. Not with words, but with pulses of psychic feedback so intense they drive nearby adepts to madness or ecstasy. That doesn't sound like life support to me. That sounds like a channel, like something alive is trying to push through. Some theorists, particularly those who dive into the more esoteric fan circles, believe the throne is more than just a technological construct. They call it a dimensional anchor, something that allows the Emperor's shattered psyche to remain tethered not just to his body, but to the material universe. It's not preserving him, it's binding him. And through that binding, he dreams, not because he wants to, but because the machine forces him to stay aware in a way no human or God was ever meant to endure. Imagine being suspended in place, your mind stretched across time and unreality, unable to drift away into death, unable to awaken fully. That's the theory. The throne doesn't just hold his body together. It traps his essence in a liminal state. A state where thought becomes dream and dream becomes reality, funneled directly into the warp through its ancient architecture. It becomes a loop, a psychic circuit. The Emperor dreams, the throne channels, the warp absorbs, and the galaxy warps in response. Some fans take it even further and say the throne amplifies those dreams, that it acts like a psychic lens. That's why astropaths feel his presence so strongly. That's why saints rise and fall based on unexplained patterns. The Emperor might not even know what he's doing, but the throne makes his subconscious scream across the stars. It might even be why the Astronomican burns as bright as it does, not just because of the sacrifice of psychers, but because the throne is constantly transmitting a dream signal into the heart of the warp. And what about the machine itself? The thing is ancient. Parts of it are said to be so old that even the Mechanicum doesn't have a clue where they came from. Some whisper it predates the Imperium, that fragments of Dark Age tech were used in its construction. Or even worse, that Xenos or Old One artifacts were integrated into its framework. If that's true, then the throne might not have been built by humanity alone. It might be a hybrid creation. Something far more than the sum of its parts. And if you combine that with the Emperor's unmatched psychic strength, you've basically got a gateway with a god's mind hardwired into it. And that brings up the final, terrifying idea. What if the Emperor doesn't dream through the throne? What if the throne is the dream? Like, what if it's not just a medium, but a structure within his subconscious? A palace built from raw psychic memory, whose walls are shaped by pain and duty and failure. The tech priests who tend the throne speak of rituals and rhythms, of systems that behave as if they're aware. And who's to say they aren't? Maybe they're reflections of his own dreaming mind, shaped not by code but by thought. Every hum of machinery, every flicker of energy, a heartbeat in a sleeping giant. There's this image that I can't get out of my head. The Emperor somewhere deep inside the warp, or maybe beyond it entirely, sitting on a second throne, not mechanical, not golden, but one made of pure thought. And the throne on Terra? It's just the echo, a projection of that impossible seat of dreaming power. And as long as it exists, as long as we keep feeding it with sacrifice and belief, that echo continues to shape reality. Not because of its machinery, but because of the connection, because it lets him reach. And maybe, in some broken, impossible way, that's what's keeping the galaxy alive. Or maybe it's what's tearing it apart. Either way, the Golden Throne isn't just a chair. It's not just a coffin either. It's a door. And I don't think we truly understand what's on the other side. There's this phrase that gets thrown around a lot in Imperium doctrine: the light of the Emperor guides us. Most people think of it as metaphor, a kind of spiritual reassurance that they're not alone out there in the void. But the thing is, the Astronomican isn't a symbol. It's real. It's a blazing psychic beacon, a concentrated firestorm of willpower that stretches across the galaxy. And it's not just light in the darkness, it's direction, it's navigation. Without it, ships can't travel through the warp without getting lost, consumed, or worse. But the more I think about it, the more I wonder, what is the Astronomican really? Is it just psychic energy, or is it something far stranger? Something more like a dream being projected into space, shaping reality around it? Here's the wild theory that some fans, myself included, can't stop poking at. What if the Astronomican isn't just a lighthouse in the warp, but a map? Not a map drawn by cartographers, but one dreamed into existence by the Emperor himself. A mental projection of the galaxy sculpted by his subconscious, shining outward from Terra like the sun at the center of a psychic solar system. The idea is that this beacon isn't just guiding ships, it's reshaping the very pathways of the warp to conform to his internal vision of what the galaxy should look like. I know that sounds out there, but think about how warp travel works. It's not physical space, it's not bound by gravity or distance. It's shaped by emotion, perception, and most of all, belief. And no one believes harder than the Emperor. So if he's still dreaming, still caught in that half-living, half-lost state on the throne, then what he's imagining might not stay confined to his mind. It might be bleeding into the warp, forming corridors and currents of stability. Highways through madness defined not by laws of physics, but by the mental blueprints of a god who refuses to let go. There are plenty of reports from navigators that suggest the Astronomican isn't a static beacon. It pulses, it shifts, it breathes. Sometimes it flares up unpredictably. Other times it seems to flicker, as if uncertain. And when it does, entire sectors fall into chaos. Trade routes vanish. Systems go dark. It's not mechanical, it's organic. Like a living thing. And if the Emperor is the source, then that behavior might be an extension of his dream state. A sign that his inner vision is changing, struggling, evolving. I've seen this theory called the mind map hypothesis in some circles. The idea that what the Imperium sees as a constant, stable light is actually an interpretation of something far more fluid. The Emperor isn't just lighting a torch, he's dreaming of roads. And through that dream, those roads begin to exist. Not physically, but as real routes within the chaotic, surreal plane of the warp. Routes that only make sense because his mind is making them make sense. There's something eerily poetic about that. Ships drifting through the void, guided not by machines but by thought, and not even their own thoughts. His. Every warp journey is a pilgrimage into the Emperor's dream. And sometimes I wonder, do navigators feel it? Not just the pressure or the light, but the shape of it, The curves and turns that make no sense except to someone who's dreaming in celestial scale. I imagine them closing their third eye and seeing not stars, but memory, intent, regret, love, rage, all of it tangled into glowing arteries of psychic flame. What makes it even more complicated is how dependent the Imperium has become on this flame. The Astronomican isn't just a convenience, it's a crutch, a way to pretend that the galaxy is still under control. But if that flame is built from dreams, if it's constantly shifting based on the Emperor's state of mind, then how stable is our reality really? Are we walking roads that exist only because he wants them to? And what happens if he stops wanting? Some fans even go as far as to say the Astronomican is a trap. Not for us, but for him. That by anchoring his consciousness to this beacon, we've frozen his dream into a fixed pattern. It can't evolve, can't adapt, it can only loop. And so the Imperium follows the same paths, fights the same wars, relives the same tragedies, because the flame lights only what the dream remembers. The galaxy becomes a maze of nostalgia, a projection of a broken god's inability to imagine something new. And yet, we survive. Somehow the Imperium holds together. Trade continues, fleets arrive, wars are fought in semi-predictable ways. Maybe that's proof the flame still burns true. Or maybe it's the result of a dream so strong, so stubborn, that it keeps the illusion of order alive even as the foundations rot beneath us. Maybe that's all the Astronomican is, a flickering dream of what the galaxy used to be, projected so fiercely that it still is. There's a strange comfort in that, honestly, because it means we're not totally lost. But it also means that the path forward is built on memories. And memories, especially those forged in pain and failure, aren't always the best guides. So next time you hear someone say the Emperor guides us through the void, think about what that really means. Maybe it's not faith. Maybe it's not duty. Maybe it's not even light. Maybe we're all just passengers in a ship that's flying through someone else's dream. And the only thing keeping us from crashing into oblivion is the fact that he still remembers the way. This is where the whole dream theory really starts to mess with your head. When you begin to wonder if the Emperor isn't just shaping routes through the warp, but actually shaping the warp itself. Not by decree, not through psychic effort like a psyker casting a power, but just by being. By dreaming. Because if we accept that the warp responds to thought, belief, and emotion, if it births gods from raw feeling, then what happens when the most powerful psychic mind in human history spends 10,000 years pouring its broken dreams into that same psychic sea? There's a theory that I came across years ago. The kind of thing you scroll past at first and then can't stop thinking about later. It goes something like this. The Emperor, locked in his half-living state, has become more than just a psychic anchor. He's become a force of influence in the warp. Not quite a god, not quite dead, but something in between. And because he's not whole, because he's dreaming rather than consciously acting, he's shaping things in unintended ways. His thoughts aren't just leaking into reality, they're warping the warp. Some people even go so far as to say he's forming a new pantheon. Not deliberately, not through cult or prayer, but by accident, through the sheer weight of his mind, fragmented and scattered like glass across a psychic ocean. The idea is that each shard of his personality, each aspect of who he once was, the visionary, the tyrant, the father, the destroyer, the savior, is bleeding into the warp and taking shape, not as coherent entities, not yet, but as proto-consciousnesses, seeds of potential, future gods waiting to be named. It's a terrifying thought, honestly, because it flips the usual fear on its head. We're always worried about the chaos gods creating more horror, about humanity feeding them with war and despair. But what if we're creating something else? Or worse, what if he is? And here's where it gets even more complicated. The Emperor didn't want to become a god. He despised the idea. But the warp doesn't care about intention. It cares about weight. It cares about meaning. So if enough people believe something, if enough feeling goes into it, the warp responds. Now imagine what happens when a being like the Emperor dreams endlessly about sacrifice, duty, pain, and betrayal. Those emotions are real, and they're pouring into the warp at a scale that no mortal can even imagine. Wouldn't they start to take form? There are already hints of this scattered through the lore. Saints that rise and fall like echoes of something bigger. miracles that defy every known rule. Entities that don't quite match the profile of any of the four chaos gods, but still act with intent. Some fans say these are merely manifestations of the Emperor's will. Others think they're more, that they're becoming something else. Not chaos, not order, something new, something in between. And then there's the flip side of the theory, the idea that the Emperor's dreams aren't creating gods, they're holding them back. That without him, without his massive psychic presence anchoring and reshaping the warp through sheer inertia, entirely new gods would already exist. Think about that. For 10,000 years, humanity has been trapped in a cycle of fear, repression, stagnation, yet somehow we haven't seen a new chaos god emerge. Not a god of bureaucracy, not a god of despair, not even a god of blind fanaticism, which the Imperium is full of. Why? Maybe it's him. Maybe his dreams are acting like a dam, holding back forces that would otherwise congeal into new divinities. The warp wants to take what we give it and shape it into something terrible. But if the Emperor's presence is strong enough, if his dreaming mind still holds sway, then maybe he's preventing those gods from forming. Maybe he's wrestling with the warp in silence, dreaming walls into place that keep the tide from rising. That would explain so much, honestly. Why the galaxy teeters on the edge of chaos, but never fully tips over. Why some things almost become gods, like the myth of the Star Child or the fractured whispers of the Divine Emperor, but never quite manifest. It's like something's suppressing them, flattening the peaks, dimming the sparks. His dreams aren't just forming things, they're erasing others. But even that comes with a cost. Dreams can't last forever. Minds degrade, focus fades. And if the Emperor is still human in any meaningful way, even at his scale, then he can't keep dreaming like this indefinitely. One day, he might slip. He might lose control. And then the things he's been holding back could surge into being, born not from faith, but from the cracks in his dying mind. So here's the question that keeps me up at night. Are we living in an age of restraint or an age of gestation? Is the Emperor holding the warp in check through his dreams, or are his dreams slowly building something we don't understand yet? Something that hasn't been named. Either way, it paints a picture of a galaxy that isn't just threatened by the four gods of chaos. There might be other forces stirring beneath the surface. Things shaped by dreams instead of rituals. Shadows cast not by rage or lust or change or decay, but by something older, something quieter, something waiting. And if that's true, then we're not just followers of a god. We might be the citizens of a dream world built on the edge of new divinity. And when the dream shifts, when the Emperor's will finally falters or transcends, the galaxy will awaken to a warp reborn. For better or so much worse. You ever think about what it actually means to believe in the Emperor? I mean, really believe. Not just out of fear or obligation, but with your whole heart. Imagine being some worker on a hive world, never seeing the sky, living in filth and machinery, and still lighting a candle every night because you think the Emperor hears you. That's the kind of faith the Imperium is built on. Billions, no, trillions of minds focused on a single golden image. And the more you think about it, the more it starts to feel like this isn't just religion. It's a psychic engine, a self-sustaining loop between dream and dreamer. And the craziest part? We don't even know who's dreaming who anymore. There's this theory that I've always loved, and it goes like this. The Emperor dreams, and those dreams shape the galaxy, but in turn, the people of the Imperium dream of him. They worship him, speak to him, pray to him, and those thoughts pour into the warp like rivers of emotion. The warp, being what it is, doesn't just take those thoughts in, it amplifies them, echoes them, maybe even reflects them. So the Emperor's dream becomes their belief, and their belief becomes fuel for his dream. It's a loop, constantly feeding itself. And somewhere inside that cycle, the line between the god and the worshipper dissolves. The thing is, symbols matter in this universe. They don't just represent power, they are power. The aquila, the robed priest, the skull-faced mask of the commissar, all of it has weight, not just culturally, but psychically. In the Imperium, symbols are reinforced by generations of reverence and fear until they practically hum with energy. Some inquisitors even claim that places saturated with prayer can become holy ground in the literal sense, repelling demonic forces or igniting spontaneous miracles. That's not science. That's faith becoming reality. And if that happens on the ground level, what do you think happens on the highest level, where all those prayers converge? There's this old belief in some fringe ecclesiarchy cults, considered borderline heretical, but too poetic to ignore, that when you dream of the emperor, he dreams back. That the people chosen to receive visions or burning passion in their hearts aren't just psychics or the faithful, but mirrors. That their dreams are his dreams, filtered through flesh. It's the idea that he's not actively controlling their thoughts, but that their connection creates a resonance, like two tuning forks humming in harmony across time and space. One lonely dreamer on a forgotten world wakes up believing they've been chosen, and maybe they have, not because the emperor spoke, but because they tuned into a frequency that's always there, humming beneath the surface of human consciousness. And this gets even weirder when you think about saints. Some of them aren't even psychers. They don't channel lightning or see the future. They're just believed in, and that belief lifts them, transforms them. In some cases, raises them from the dead or shields them from harm. It's like reality adjusts itself to match the expectations of those who believe. Some fans argue that this isn't the emperor acting directly at all. It's the collective dream of humanity reshaping the world to fit its myth. But if that's the case, and all that psychic energy is still being channeled to the Golden Throne, then the emperor's dream might just be the sum total of ours. That's a heavy thought, because it means every whisper of prayer, every fevered hope of the downtrodden, every desperate cry of faith, it all becomes part of the emperor's dreaming mind. And when you pile that much human emotion together, you don't get peace. You get noise, suffering, glory, guilt. Endless contradictions, all pulsing in the background of a god who never asked to be worshipped. What kind of dreams would that produce? Some argue this is why the Imperium is the way it is. Not because the emperor wanted it that way, but because we did. Over time, our fear of damnation, our obsession with purity, our thirst for vengeance, all of it seeped into his dream and reshaped it. Now it loops back on itself. The people dream of the god emperor, and in dreaming him, they feed the very world that makes them dream harder. It's like a closed circuit of psychic pressure, locked in by faith, impossible to break. And if that's true, it explains why the Imperium seems so resistant to change. Not just politically or institutionally, but metaphysically. Like reality itself is stuck in a dream that no one can wake up from. Every rebellion, every reformist movement, every attempt to soften the faith ends up crushed. Sometimes not even by human hands, but by the warp recoiling against it. Like the emperor's dream has hardened, become so thick with human belief, that it no longer allows new thought inside. But here's the question that really gets under my skin. Is he aware of it? Does the emperor know we're dreaming of him this way? Is he still shaping us from his throne, guiding our dreams toward some hidden purpose? Or is he caught in our storm, drifting deeper into the collective subconscious of a species that turned him into something he never meant to be? Some fans say this is the final tragedy, that we made him into a god because we were afraid, and now he can't be anything but a god. That his original dream, whatever it was, got buried under the weight of our symbols and prayers. That we've overwritten his will with our own mythology. And yet, he still dreams. He still burns. Whether he's dreaming us or we're dreaming him, the fire hasn't gone out. And maybe that's what makes it all so hauntingly beautiful. Because in a galaxy this dark, maybe the dream itself, however broken, however bloody, is the only thing keeping us together. War never really stops in the Imperium. It's more like a constant, a background hum of gunfire and prayer that pulses through every corner of the galaxy. But what's always made me pause, what I've obsessed over, is how some of these wars feel too perfect. Like they unfold along invisible lines, like someone has already drawn the map before the fighting even starts. The Imperium has too many worlds, too many enemies, too many crises to manage coherently, and yet, somehow, entire campaigns seem to move with purpose. Fleets arrive just in time. Prophecies line up with real-world events. Heroes emerge from obscurity at the exact moment they're needed most. And every time that happens, I start to wonder, is someone dreaming these wars into existence? The theory goes like this. The Emperor's dreams don't just influence the shape of the warp or the structure of reality. They influence events. Specifically, wars, battles, crusades. There's this idea that the Imperium's endless military actions aren't just reactions to external threats, but manifestations of a deeper pattern. A pattern seated in the mind of the Emperor, echoed into the warp, and then made real through the actions of those who unknowingly follow that echo. Let's talk about the heroes for a second, because that's where things get spooky. There are way too many stories in Imperial history where a completely unknown figure suddenly rises to legendary status overnight. A guardsman gets shot, falls into a crater, and climbs out leading a counterattack that changes the course of a battle. A minor inquisitor receives a dream, follows it across half the galaxy, and uncovers a chaos cult before it detonates a planet. A tech priest sees a flicker of golden light in a data stream and invents a weapon that turns the tide. These aren't just coincidences, they're patterns. Moments of inspiration, of impossible timing, of divine coincidence. And the more of them you study, the more they start to feel like dreams bleeding into real space. Some fans say these are the Emperor's subconscious defenses, that even in his dreaming state, he reacts to threats by nudging fate, by implanting ideas, dreams, visions into those still capable of acting. Not commands, but impulses, instincts, maybe even full battle plans, seen as prophecies or divine inspiration. It wouldn't be the first time psychers reported receiving entire tactical solutions during meditation, or dreamwalkers emerging from trances with coordinates burned into their memory. And maybe that's why some wars feel more like rituals than strategy. You've seen it, right? The way the Imperium wages war. It's not just about winning, it's about fulfilling something, a vision, a prophecy, a reenactment of ancient battles long past. The soldiers don't just fight, they believe. And belief in this universe has power. The idea is that if the Emperor dreams of war, not just abstractly, but vividly, then those dreams can manifest as reality. The galaxy reacts. Leaders receive dreams. Campaigns take shape, not because of political will or military intelligence, but because the dream demands it. I've even seen people claim that the Emperor doesn't just influence the winners, but the conflicts themselves, that he might be dreaming up entire wars, not to save the Imperium, but to reinforce its identity, to keep it locked into its cycle of sacrifice, faith, and conflict. After all, what is the Imperium without war? Peace, in some twisted way, might be the true enemy of the dream. So perhaps the dream keeps the machine running, not out of malice, but because it no longer knows any other way to exist. This might explain why even the most senseless crusades somehow feel ordained. Why worlds are burned for reasons no one understands. Why generals fight to the last man for planets with no strategic value. It's not logic driving them. It's something else. A dream of war, echoed through banners and litanies passed down in stories and sermons. They're reenacting fragments of the Emperor's memory. Or worse, his regrets. There's one story that always stuck with me. A planetary governor who claimed to receive nightly dreams of a golden warrior bathed in fire, weeping as a black sun rose behind him. He was so moved by the dreams that he rallied his PDF and launched an unprovoked assault on a neighboring system, insisting it was part of the design. He was declared mad. Executed. But then the Inquisition discovered that the targeted system had been harboring a chaos cult, one so deep it had infected the Mechanicus itself. If that attack hadn't happened, the entire subsector might have fallen. Coincidence? Maybe, but I think about that story a lot. Because if even madness can serve the dream, then maybe the dream isn't about morality. Maybe it's just about momentum. The Emperor doesn't need to explain. He doesn't need to justify. He just dreams. And somewhere, someone moves. And of course it raises another question. Are these dreams creating heroes, or is the dream made of them? Maybe the Emperor's subconscious is filled with echoes of those he loved, those he lost. Maybe he dreams of Horus still, not in hatred but in grief. Maybe he dreams of Guilliman, of Sanguinius, of the brothers who stood with him, and maybe those dreams form psychic templates, archetypes, imprints, that the warp then casts into real space new champions. Not reincarnations, but reflections, mirror shades of old light. And when those reflections appear, whether it's a saint, a general, or a soldier with nothing left to lose, the dream rolls forward again. Another war, another moment of glory. Another sacrifice to keep the pattern alive. It's beautiful in a way, but also horrifying. because it means the Imperium might never be free. Not as long as the Emperor dreams. Not as long as his mind remains tethered to a galaxy that only knows how to fight. Maybe that's the price of salvation, to burn forever in a war that was never ours to begin with. A war born in the mind of a sleeping god, playing out in the lives of those who never had a choice. This is the part that genuinely chills me. The idea that the Emperor doesn't just dream of light, of heroes, of order in a fractured galaxy, but that he dreams of fear, of failure, of horror. And that those nightmares, those deepest, most repressed fragments of his broken psyche, are not just stuck inside him. They're leaking out, taking form, infecting reality. It sounds like pure myth at first, like the kind of grimdark overreach you'd expect from a story that's already dripping in tragedy. But if you've really been following this dream theory, if you've been watching how the warp bends to thought, and how the Emperor's presence bleeds through everything, it starts to feel less like metaphor and more like inevitability. Let's be honest, the Emperor has every reason to fear. Betrayal, loss, the corruption of his sons, the fall of the Webway project, the failure of mankind to rise as he intended, all of that must weigh on him. And if we accept that his thoughts, conscious or not, resonate through the throne and into the warp, then it's not a huge leap to say that his fears do too. And in the warp, fear isn't just an emotion. It's matter, it's energy, it creates. So what happens when the most powerful mind humanity has ever known starts to dream of monsters? Some fans call this the shadow reflection theory, the idea that certain cataclysms throughout Imperial history weren't just random or even caused by chaos alone, but were seeded by the Emperor's own subconscious terror. He fears the return of his lost sons, and in time, echoes of them appear, twisted and broken. He fears the rise of false gods, and cults spring up in his own name, more brutal and dogmatic than anything chaos ever invented. He fears stagnation, and the galaxy becomes a tomb, choking on bureaucracy and holy fire. It's like watching a mind eat itself, and dragging the rest of us down with it. There's even speculation that some warp storms, especially the unnatural ones like the Great Rift, could be manifestations of his psychic recoil. A scream without sound torn from his dreaming soul when Guilliman was reborn, or Kadia fell, or the veil between realities was shattered one too many times. Maybe he saw these things coming in his nightmares. Maybe he tried to stop them, but couldn't. Or worse, maybe his fear of them ensured they happened. Self-fulfilling prophecies, born not from prophecy but from trauma. That's the thing about fear. It loops. It feeds itself. And in the warp, that feedback can turn a flicker of doubt into a typhoon. If the Emperor still dreams, and those dreams include even a sliver of dread, then what comes out the other side might not just be random psychic detritus. It could be storms, demons, madness, entire cultures built on fear of things that haven't even happened yet, but will, because belief makes them real. I once read a theory that even the Tyranids, yes them, might be connected to this. Not that he created them directly, but that the fear of something utterly alien, something outside chaos, outside understanding, be a whisper in his mind, a nightmare of hunger that could not be reasoned with. And in the warp, that fear found a shape, a direction. It crossed the void and began to manifest. We don't know where the hive fleets really come from. We have guesses. But what if they're not a thing at all? What if they're a reaction? Now, I'm not saying the Emperor is dreaming up every horror we face, but I do think his fears are laced into the fabric of reality, or at least our perception of it. Fear changes people, changes institutions, changes entire cultures. And if the warp amplifies those changes and feeds them back into real space, then it's possible the very worst of the Imperium, the cruelty, the paranoia, the endless purges, might be the echo of one man's eternal, unspoken terror. A dream he can't wake from, but that all of us are forced to live inside. It makes you wonder about the things he doesn't speak of. The ancient enemies we're never told about. The dark times he supposedly survived before humanity even crawled out of the dirt. What if some of those memories still haunt him? What if his nightmares are filled with shadows we've never seen, because he's trying to keep us from seeing them? But by dreaming them, he's still breathing life into them, still giving them shape. And then there's the really grim possibility that some of these nightmares aren't even his anymore. That the collective fear of humanity, funneled through 10,000 years of worship and bloodshed, has become part of him. That the Emperor isn't just dreaming his own dreams. He's dreaming ours. Every prayer muttered in terror, every scream of the dying, every whispered horror story passed around by acolytes in candlelit bunkers, it all flows to the throne, and it festers, and it grows. In that sense, the Emperor becomes less of a person and more of a mirror, a psychic monolith reflecting back our darkest selves. And if that's true, then the galaxy might not just be shaped by his fears, but by ours, amplified 1 billion times through the mind of a god who can't stop listening. Maybe that's the ultimate tragedy of the throne. Not that it traps him, but that it traps everything. Every emotion, every thought, every fear, all caught in a loop. We're not just praying to him, we're infecting him. And his dreams, once filled with hope and vision, have curdled into something darker. Something that watches us bleed and asks quietly, "Is this what you wanted?" And maybe the worst part is, we no longer know the answer. You ever get that creeping feeling that someone knows more than they're letting on? That the real story is hidden under 1,000 layers of silence and ritual? When it comes to the Emperor's dreams, or whether he's dreaming at all, that feeling becomes overwhelming the closer you look at Terra. Not the public Terra, not the golden spires and endless pilgrim queues, but the heart of it. The dungeons beneath the throne. The shadowed halls where the air is too heavy with incense and fear. The place where whispers go to die. That's where the truth is. Or at least, that's where it's buried. It's not just a matter of speculation anymore. Fans have been piecing together fragments from lore, novels, side stories, even old campaign books, and the pattern is hard to ignore. There are factions within the Imperium that definitely know something, the kind of knowledge you don't write down, the kind that drives people mad, or worse, compels them to kill to protect it. And at the center of all of it is the Emperor. More specifically, the state of his mind, his dreams, his silence. Let's start with the Sisters of Silence, pariahs, blanks, psychic nulls. They've been watching the throne for 10,000 years, standing beside it, their presence a void against the screaming tides of the warp. Why them? Why not psychers or priests or high-ranking Imperial agents? Some fans believe it's because the sisters can't be influenced by dreams. They're immune to psychic suggestion. That means they're the only ones who can observe without being absorbed, without becoming part of the dream themselves. The implication is terrifying, that the Emperor's dreams are so potent, so immersive, that regular minds can't get close without being shaped, rewritten, or even broken. The sisters are there not just to protect him, but to protect us. Then there's the Adeptus Custodes, the 10,000 golden warriors who never leave Terra without permission, who know more about the Emperor than anyone alive. We know they've changed in recent years, become more active, more interventionist, but on Terra, they remain guardians of the gate. And some believe that their real role isn't just to defend the Emperor's body, but to control access to his presence, not just physically, but psychically. They determine who gets close, who hears, who sees. And if you believe some of the deeper theories, they've silenced more than a few who got too curious. One story I came across, probably apocryphal, but it stayed with me, tells of a junior tech priest who was brought into the inner workings of the Golden Throne for a maintenance rotation. He lasted 3 days. When they found him, he had carved symbols into his own body, speaking in tongues no one could translate. Before he died, he whispered one phrase: "The king dreams in gold." Now obviously this kind of tale gets passed around as horror fiction. But in a universe where the warp is shaped by thought, how different is myth from reality? The Black Priests of Mars are another name that comes up, whispered in Mechanicus circles. These aren't your average tech clerics chanting binaric prayers. They're said to be the ones who truly interface with the throne's deepest systems, the ones who've seen code no longer written, machines older than the Imperium itself. Some claim that they've formed a cult around the dream state of the Emperor, interpreting system fluctuations and energy patterns like prophecies, not even to control, just to understand. Because if the throne is a dream amplifier, then they believe it has a language, and they're trying to read it. But it's not just Martians and nulls. Even among the High Lords of Terra, there's suspicion. Some fans believe there's a secret quorum, a hidden council that exists outside the official hierarchy, whose sole job is to manage the emperor's mental presence. They control the rituals of the throne, monitor psychic feedback loops, decide how much truth filters down to the ecclesiarchy or the Inquisition. If such a group exists, it would mean the Imperium is partially run by people not responding to the Emperor's will, but managing it, like handlers for a sleeping god. And then there's the Inquisition. Oh, the Inquisition absolutely knows more than they admit, especially the Ordo Malleus, the ones who study demons and warp phenomena. They've encountered too many anomalies tied to imperial relics and saintly phenomena to write it all off. Some reports even mention individuals who receive commands from the Emperor during dreams, only to later display knowledge of future events. Are these people touched by prophecy, or are they infected by the same dream radiation that flows from the throne? One fan theory that haunts me says the dreams of the Emperor are actually becoming more unstable, and the inner circle knows. That's why so much secrecy. That's why so many conflicting stories. Some think he's fragmenting, not just spiritually but psychically. That his dreams are splintering, each piece becoming more volatile, more dangerous. And the factions closest to him are quietly preparing for something none of us are ready for. The moment the dream stops. Or worse, the moment it starts changing. You can see the cracks forming already. Saint phenomena becoming more erratic. Astropathic messages laced with static and impossible symbols. Navigators reporting visions of impossible architecture woven through the Astronomican's light. Something is happening. Something the people in gold armor and crimson robes don't want us to know. Because if the Emperor is shifting, if his dreams are changing course, the entire galaxy might be pulled with them. Like a planet caught in the gravitational well of a collapsing star. And maybe that's why the silence around the throne is so absolute. It's not just about reverence. It's fear. Fear that if the truth leaks out, the illusion will break. That if the people ever truly understood the nature of the thing they worship, not a god of order, but a dreamer trapped in a loop of memory, fear, and fire, then the fragile machinery of the Imperium would snap like a rusted gear. So we keep praying, and they keep watching. The sisters with their quiet eyes, the custodes with their silent authority, the Martians with their endless data, all circling the throne, guarding not just a corpse but a secret. The secret that the God we serve may still dream, and that those dreams are changing. So here we are. After all the theories, all the whispers and symbols and silent wars, it comes down to this strange, intimate idea that the Emperor of mankind, the greatest being humanity has ever produced, might still be dreaming. Not ruling, not commanding, just dreaming. And maybe, just maybe, those dreams are shaping the galaxy more than any sword, sermon, or decree ever could. It's almost too much to grasp, honestly. The thought that the Imperium, this colossal crumbling monument of faith and fire, might be less of a plan and more of a consequence. That every flame-lit cathedral, every doomed crusade, every desperate cry into the void isn't just a reflection of divine will, but a ripple in someone else's dream. That we are walking roads paved not with purpose, but with memory. And not even our memory, his. The more you stare at it, the more it stares back. The dream isn't something distant anymore. It's in everything. It's in the way psychers scream when they glimpse too far. It's in the fire of the Astronomican, burning like the last thought of a dying sun. It's in the saints and their impossible miracles. In the wars that move like old myths retold. It's even in the silence of the throne, that crushing holy silence that no one dares to question. A silence that might be filled not with death, but with thoughts too vast, too fractured, too ancient for us to ever understand. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we were never meant to understand it. Maybe the Emperor, in his post-human infinity, has slipped beyond the reach of anything human, even comprehension. Maybe his dreams are like music written in a key we've never heard. A melody that shapes time and matter, but leaves us stumbling, forever off beat. Or maybe it's not even his anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe it's ours, projected so violently into his mind through worship, trauma, and need, that we've built a prison from our collective yearning. There are fans who believe that, deep down, the Emperor is trying to wake up, That all the psychic feedback, all the strange anomalies and shifting visions are signs of a mind straining against its chains. Not out of cruelty, not even because he wants to leave, but because the dream has grown unstable. It was never meant to last this long. 10,000 years of pressure, of psychic echoes, of belief hardened into law, it's too much, even for a god. And when that pressure finally cracks, what happens next? Some people fear it'll be the end. That the Emperor's awakening will collapse the Astronomican, tear the warp wide open, and unleash the chaos he's been holding back all this time. Others think it'll be a rebirth. That he'll rise, purified, no longer dreaming, but seeing, guiding humanity not as a symbol, but as a presence, a will. And still others think it doesn't matter. That the dream will go on, with or without him, because we've already made it real. That even if the Emperor died tomorrow, the inertia of belief would keep the fire burning. I don't know where I stand. Some days I want to believe he's still in there, that the Father of mankind hasn't abandoned us, that he's watching, hoping, shaping our path one dream at a time. Other days, it all feels too distant, too broken. Like we're trapped in a loop we can't escape, playing roles in a story no one remembers writing. And that's what really scares me. Not the gods, not the demons, not even the end. What scares me is the possibility that we don't want to wake up. That we've grown so used to the dream, so addicted to its rituals and symbols, that we'd fight to keep it alive, even if it was killing us. So maybe the real question isn't whether the Emperor's dreams are shaping reality. Maybe the question is, if they are, do we deserve to live in them? Are we the heroes he hoped for, or the ghosts of his regrets? Are we building the future, or just repeating the past in endless blood-soaked echoes? And if, one day, the Emperor does wake up, will he even recognize us? That's the beauty and the tragedy of this entire universe. It gives us gods who might be corpses, saints who might be liars, truths that reshape themselves depending on who's watching. And in the center of it all, a throne that whispers not commands, but dreams. Quiet, golden dreams that light the stars and haunt the warp and keep us all from falling into the abyss. For now, thanks for diving into this theory with me. If this kind of deep lore speculation and mind-warping what-if makes your heart beat faster, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The dream isn't over. It never is. And together, maybe we'll figure out what comes next.